Last time, thanks to GoodGood Giving and the Kevin Richardson Foundation, we traveled to South Africa and spent 4 magical days at Rhino Post Lodge inside Kruger National Park. We had plenty to do. Every morning and afternoon we set out on long game drives. Each one lasted almost 4 hours, yet the time flew by in an instant. We witnessed stunning landscapes and the beautiful wild animals roaming freely around us. We enjoyed the warm hospitality and care of the Rhino Post staff and the wonderful company of the other guests as well. We even had the chance to spend one night out in the open, sleeping under the stars, sharing stories with the rangers, surrounded by the sights, scents and sounds of the African bush. Leaving Kruger was incredibly hard. We could have stayed forever, but our journey didn't end there. Now, in part 3, we are heading to Cape Town, where we will spend 3 nights at the President Hotel in Bantry Bay. We will explore the natural wonders of the area, enjoy the region's incredible wine country, and discover the beauty of the city itself. I will try to include as much as I can. I hope you will enjoy it. Come along with us for one more adventure. So yes, that's where we left off. And honestly, it was really hard to leave that almost paradise-like place. This time, our plane was a bit bigger than the one we'd flown in with. But there were so few passengers on board that before takeoff, the crew actually asked everyone sitting in rows 5 to 9 and 15 to 19 to move further back to balance the weight. I'd never seen that before, but it made perfect sense. For a long while, we just kept looking back at Kruger from above. This flight was longer, about 2.5 hours. I had brought an extra microSD card from home, and this leg of the journey was perfect for copying all my photos and videos over to it. Just to be safe, if anything happened to my phone, at least there would already be a full backup of everything we'd recorded so far. Not long after, we landed. We picked up our luggage, found our transfer driver, and headed towards the President Hotel. Before our trip, through a friend, I found out that one of our mutual friends, Monica, had moved from Hungary to South Africa, and that she and her husband, Mzi, actually live in Cape Town. So before we traveled, I wrote to her and said that since we were coming all this way, it would be lovely to meet. When she sent me their address and I told her which hotel we'll be staying at, we realized they live literally a 3-minute walk from the hotel. From our room window, we could pretty much see their building. Perfect. We were given room 448. On the TV, the hotel had its own information channel or application where you could read everything you needed, right down to the bar and restaurant menus. From our window, we even had a small view of the ocean. And then we had a little incident. In the afternoon, we went to a restaurant that had a big gluten-free selection. We told the waiter we needed the gluten-free version of the wraps. But as we later found out back at the hotel, that's not what we got. My brother's stomach started hurting badly. Then after a while, mine too. And we both had, stomach issues. When I checked the bill, I realized there was no gluten-free surcharge listed. So they must have served us the regular version. Luckily, we had brought medicine from home for exactly this kind of situation. but it still put a bit of a shadow over our next 3 days. Anyway, I don't want to complain too much. I messaged Moni that we'd grab a quick bite to eat somewhere nearby and then head over to their place. We spent that evening with them. From behind their apartment, they had a really nice view. The next morning, we got up around 6 and went down for breakfast. Technically, hotel breakfasts are usually just your standard continental breakfast, but looking at this buffet, it was anything but basic. The pictures speak for themselves. Our first day was a Cape Point full-day tour. Our guide picked us up at the hotel, and we headed south towards Hout Bay. A lovely couple and their son had also booked the tour, so there were 6 of us in total.
You see all the trees around here?
Yes.
If you want to translate the name, it's going to be Hout Bay. The Cape Floral Kingdom does not consist of any trees. If you look at that mountains, you see the top or the upper part of the mountain. There's only bushes and shrubs there. There's no trees over there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what the Cape Floral Kingdom looks like. These trees that you have here was all planted here for the reason that Cape Town did not have a wood source. So they planted all these trees in this area so that they could have a wood source. So that if you...
We arrived in Hout Bay. The harbor is beautiful and the weather was perfect. Our guide warned us that in the harbor there are people who deliberately lure Cape fur seals up onto the jetty so tourists can take photos of them and then demand money for it, getting angry if you don't pay. Keeping that in mind, I filmed one of the seals from a distance for a few seconds. It was very cute though. We didn't have much time here, about half an hour, and then we moved on. On the other side, along Chapman's Peak Drive, we stopped at a viewpoint. The scenery was spectacular. Our guide said this is one of the most beautiful coastal drives in the world, and I believe it. It really is breathtaking.
Is more of your scenic.
Oh.
I just wanted to say the
That's
wow
nice.
kind of thing, but since you said it yourself, I mean, yeah. There's another wow for you, because we're going to drive through the mountain almost. And this, I don't know why they don't put pillars on the side, because what if this starts falling in?
Yeah.
Know that if that happens, this road is going to be closed for months.
From here, we could see Noordhoek Beach, also known as Long Beach. On the far end of it lie the remains of the British steamship Kakapo, which ran aground in 1900 on her maiden voyage to Australia. The ship was never salvaged, so for more than 120 years, the sand and sea have been slowly swallowing her. The wreck is still freely accessible today, a strange time-frozen memory on the Cape Coast.
This bay from here to the other side in diameter, you're looking at about 40 kilometers.
Really?
In nature. Because I saw some...
On the way, we spotted a beautiful ostrich.
They did me. Oh, on the right. Oh, okay.
Oh, hang on, wait till I get my camera out.
in the animal kingdom, it always works like the males are usually the most beautiful, flamboyant ones,
Yeah.
where the females are the dull color.
Then we arrived at the Cape of Good Hope itself. I honestly hadn't expected to have to stand in line just to take a photo with the famous sign. Very popular place. My idea was to record a little video greeting in English from there. Let's just say it didn't quite go as planned.
Hello. We are here in the
And you can even see down there.
Good.
The center is now
Hope. Okay.
Yeah, as I said, we hadn't slept much in the previous days and we were exhausted. And the funny thing is, we had just been standing at the sign. You'd think we could have simply looked at it again to see the exact wording in English. But, oh well. Our next stop was the old Cape Point Lighthouse. You can walk up there, but we didn't really have the time or the energy to hike it. So we took the funicular called the Flying Dutchman and were at the top in a few minutes.
Please enjoy the view and the ride.
The original lighthouse from 1860 had a light of about 2,000 candela, which later turned out to be too weak because of the frequent fog and low clouds. In 1919, a new lighthouse was built much lower down, only 87 meters above sea level, with a light of several million candela. That made it the most reliable beacon on this stretch of coast. The views from up there were breathtaking. On the way back, we had a quick look around the gift shop, rode the funicular down, and continued north towards Boulders Beach. On the way, we stopped at a restaurant for lunch. The real stars of this area are the African penguins, once called jackass penguins. At first, I didn't understand why they used to be called that, but it soon became very clear. We had about an hour to spend here. By the way, even though it was only about 27 degrees in Cape Town, compared to the 34 or 35 degrees in Kruger, I actually felt the sun burning the back of my neck much more here. The African penguin is not a polar bird at all. It's the only penguin species that naturally lives in Africa. Underwater, they are incredibly fast. In the shallows, they can swim at 30-40 kilometers per hour and dive down to 25-30 meters. Sadly, they are endangered. Overfishing and habitat destruction have caused their numbers to drop dramatically, which is why every colony, like the one at Boulders Beach, is a real treasure. Can you hear that sound in the background? When I first heard it, I looked around wondering where the donkeys were. Then I remembered the term jackass penguin and slapped my forehead. Of course, that's why they were called that. The sound really does resemble a donkey braying. But because the word jackass is also used as an insult in English, they eventually changed the name to African penguin, which describes the species and its habitat much more respectfully. Grooming time. We watched them for a while longer, then walked back to the entrance. We quickly checked out the gift shop here too, and then started our drive back towards the city. On the way, our guide told us that Cape Town was the site of the world's first human-to-human heart transplant in 1967. The operation was carried out by Christian Barnard at Grooteskier Hospital. The patient lived another 18 days, which sounds short, but the new heart worked. He didn't die because of it, but from pneumonia. It was a revolutionary breakthrough in the history of medicine. We arrived back at the hotel and spent the evening again with our friends, Mzi and Monica. We told them about our day, took a short drive to see the city lights at night, and then they dropped us back at the hotel. It was another wonderful day. The next day, we had a full-day Winelands Tour planned. After breakfast, our driver arrived, along with a friendly couple who had also booked the tour for that day. During the day, we visited 3 wine estates in 3 different towns: Paarl, Franschhoek and Stellenbosch. Driving out of the city, we saw some very strong contrasts. Elegant seaside villas and well-kept streets, and then neighborhoods where many people live in corrugated iron shacks. The state of public safety is hinted at by the fact that so many walls and fences are topped with electric wires. For locals, this is everyday life, but we come from a country where the overall level of safety is relatively good, and this kind of thing is rare. So for us, it was both shocking and saddening. Our first stop was actually Stellenbosch at Marianne wine estate. Basically, the way it worked was that at each winery our guide paid for a tasting for us. We always started with lighter whites and rosés, then moved on to the fuller-bodied red wines and finished with one of the estate's top wines. That way we could really feel the differences, with the winemaker's pride saved for last. I'm not a wine expert, so I can't give you a detailed professional review, but I can appreciate a good, high-quality wine, and none of the places disappointed. From there, we continued to the outskirts of Paarl, to a place called Spice Route Destination. Spice Route is more than just a winery. It's a whole experience center just outside Paarl. In one place you will find several wine estates, artisanal chocolate, beer and gin tastings, restaurants, deli shops and galleries. It's basically like a village dedicated to flavors and craftsmanship. You stroll from one terrace to another, choosing between different workshops and foodie experiences. We only did a wine tasting this time, but you could easily spend a whole day there. We carried on towards Franschhoek. At this point, my breakfast had long worn off, and after quite a lot of wine tasting, I was getting very hungry and a bit lightheaded. Luckily, we stopped at just the right time for lunch at Alora Franschhoek. My brother and I each ordered a proper gluten-free pizza. We really needed that. Our guide asked if we'd mind taking a 15-20 minute detour before the last winery. We happily agreed, and he drew us up a stretch of Lambrechts Road near Franschhoek, where the view was really stunning. It was definitely worth the extra drive. The landscape here is quite unique. Rolling hills, steep mountains, bare rocky slopes and lush green vineyards all mixed together with soil that has a yellowish red tint. A very special combination. Our last winery was Eikehof Wines, a very charming family-run place in a beautiful setting. The tastings are held in the garden, and the whole place has a peaceful countryside atmosphere. It's not a big industrial winery, and that's exactly what makes it so special. It's friendly, calm, and very personal. In the yard, there's a beautifully preserved Ford truck from the 1940s, probably a flatbed pickup from between 1942 and 1947. It was likely used for farm work in the past, and now it feels like a little time machine sitting there under the big tree. We just sat there, enjoying the vines, the view and the fresh air. We found out they keep animals too, a few gazelles and some ostriches. They brought out little plates with sliced fruit so we could feed the ostrich.
No,
Flip like it.
oh.
You can stroke them or they invite you.
Yeah, you can stroke him. No, that's it, but it's okay. You can touch him. You got your glass. Keep your glass.
Okay.
Put it on your hand.
Yeah, you got it, boy. You got it.
It snapped up the treats very quickly. At first, it looks like it might peck you or scratch your hand, but it doesn't happen. As long as you place the fruit slice flat on your open palm, it just grabs it and that's it. It didn't hurt our hands at all.
Yeah, I'm not phone. Let's watch it for some more food. Can you take the stone as well?
Give it everything.
I don't have
We stroked its feathers. Such a strange texture, both soft and a bit coarse at the same time, almost like putting your hand on a rag rug. Not like fluffy bird feathers, much rougher, yet still pleasant to touch.
Oh, look at the eyes.
On the way back to Cape Town, we stopped at the entrance of Drakenstein prison, where there's a statue commemorating Nelson Mandela's release, placed exactly where he walked out from behind the bars in 1990. In South Africa, Nelson Mandela is not just a name. He represents the era of freedom. Mandela's release was a turning point. It marked the beginning of a truly democratic South Africa based on equal rights. It's no coincidence that he appears on the banknotes today, with the big five animals on the other side. After that, we headed back to the city. By the way, the hotel corridors were full of photos of African wildlife. Some walls were covered entirely with a single giant image like wallpaper. It looked fantastic. We didn't really plan a special program for that evening, apart from wanting to try out the hotel pool. To be honest, it wasn't exactly the warmest by then. As I mentioned, Cape Town was a lot cooler than Kruger. Plus, there was a bit of wind. The sun was no longer shining on the pool area, and the water definitely wasn't thermal. But it still felt nice to get in for a bit. Our friends asked what we were doing later, because they were planning to go down to the beach with their two dogs, Molly and Moji, and wondered if we wanted to join. Of course we did.
Monica was also saying the same.
And we are just right in time for the sunset.
Yes, yes. Deo.
I think I will just let the pictures speak for themselves here.
Baba, gyere! Nem, Mogyika nem. Gyere! Gyere, Csilla! Na most, várjál. Jó, tudás. Ott vagy kislány.
It was also fascinating to see the moon from this part of the world at such a different angle. The dark patches didn't seem to be where I was used to seeing them, and sure enough, they weren't. I've made a short ambience video of the beach and the view, which you will find in the description. After the walk, Monica and Mzi walked us back to the hotel. We said our goodbyes and then went to bed for the last night of our South African trip. The next morning, after breakfast, we packed our things and left our suitcases at the reception for safekeeping, since we had to vacate the room by 11 at the latest. Later, our driver arrived and we set off on our Table Mountain and City tour. The first program was going up Table Mountain. We got into the cable car and as we ascended, we enjoyed the views. I had a strange feeling I couldn't quite place. Then I looked down at the floor and Do you see it? There, at the edge. The entire cabin floor slowly rotates as you ride up. So instead of trying to squeeze to the other side to see that view too, you can just stand where you are and the panorama comes to you. Genius. The lady in the middle who operated the cable car was so sweet. As we reached the top, she suddenly announced,
Wow. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please be informed that Table Mountain is a return tickets. Please keep them safe as you need them to come back down because no ticket, no return.
The view from Table Mountain was absolutely incredible. We walked around and soaked it all in. The weather was perfect, clear sunny skies. I'd been hoping the mountain wouldn't be covered in cloud like it had been 2 days earlier, and thankfully it wasn't. Table Mountain is Cape Town's iconic landmark, a huge flat-topped mountain rising over 1,000 meters above sea level. It's one of the new 7 wonders of nature. Its most famous phenomenon is the so-called tablecloth, a blanket of cloud that suddenly spills over the top of the mountain and then dramatically flows down its sides. From up here, you get an unbelievable view of the city, the coastline, and the mountain chain that looks a bit like the backbone of Africa. Time went by so quickly that when we checked our watches, we realized we had to head back down to keep on schedule. By the way, you can hike up Table Mountain as well. If we'd had a full 3 day with no organized programs, I might have tried hiking it. Our next stop was Bo-kaap, one of Cape Town's oldest and most colorful neighborhoods, where every house looks like it stepped straight out of a storybook. These candy-colored buildings were originally all painted white during the time of slavery. But when the locals were finally able to own their homes, they celebrated by painting them bright colors. The colorful walls became a symbol of freedom. The area is home to the Cape Malay community, whose ancestors came from Indonesia, Malaysia, and East Africa centuries ago. They brought their spices, music, cuisine, and the culture of their masks with them. Today, this neighborhood feels like a living museum. Cobbled streets, spicy aromas, freshly fried samosas, and a slower, old-world atmosphere that's hard to find anywhere else. In one gallery, we saw works by recycle artist Nathan Chikudu, who creates sculptures from scrap metal, tin cans, and discarded materials. His pieces are full of urban stories, as if the tiny fragments of everyday life were coming together again as art. It was really inspiring to see how things others consider worthless become something new in his hands. We walked around one block and then carried on, while our guide showed us some more of the city's landmarks.
The Cape Market Square also used to be an area where the marketing used to be. Yeah, the extensions.
Our final sightseeing stop was the Diamond Works, a diamond cutting workshop and showroom. They welcomed us with a glass of sparkling wine and then took us on a tour. Through a glass wall, we could watch 2 craftsmen working on pieces right in front of us. A diamond's value is determined by the famous 4 C's: cut, color, clarity, and karat. The cut is responsible for the way the diamond reflects light and sparkles. Color is graded on a scale from D to Z. Clarity describes how free the stone is from inclusions and imperfections. Together, these factors decide how a diamond shines and how much it's worth. Diamonds aren't only white. The earth produces stones in all kinds of shades, from completely colorless to warm yellow and deep amber. The D to Z scale on the wall showed us that the less color a stone has, the rarer and more valuable it is. At the same time, warmer toned diamonds in subtle or intense yellow shades are becoming more and more popular. Many people seek them out specifically because they are more characterful and unique than a classic white diamond. Tanzanite is a beautiful gemstone that shimmers from blue to violet and is only mined in one place on Earth, the Marianne Hills in Tanzania. Because the deposits are finite, many gemologists believe Tanzanite could become one of the most valuable stones of the future. Its color can be enhanced by heat treatment, but the cutting is still done by hand with millimeter precision to bring out its full brilliance. The tour was really fascinating. And that was our last official stop. It was already close to 12:30, so I asked our guide if it would be possible to drop us off first, since we were flying home that day. He agreed and headed straight for the President Hotel. We arrived, picked up our suitcases, and set off for the airport. On the way, we enjoyed the last views of Cape Town. Just as we reached the airport, the driver asked us something.
From which country are you guys?
From Hungary, from Central Europe.
Hungarian?
Hungarian, yeah.
Oh, okay. You know what?
Huh?
You are good people. My
Really?
very first job was with a Hungarian.
Really?
He learned me how to work.
Wow.
Yes, it was the hard way, but he was a hard worker.
Uh-huh.
That's why I know the Hungarians. He taught me what it is to work.
Uh-huh.
And how you must work. But unfortunately he passed away a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Michael Gulias.
Guliash?
Gulias, yeah.
Guliash. Ah, Guliash, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Who would have thought we'd end up in a car with someone who actually had Hungarian acquaintances? To reinforce that good impression, we gave him a tip, and if I remember correctly, our last mini bottle of Unicum as a little gift. We had brought 20 of those alcohols from home and gave them to the people who took care of us along the way. We checked in, sat down in the departure hall, and did a bit of last-minute shopping at the Out of Africa store, picking up things we hadn't managed to buy earlier on the trip. Our flight to Istanbul was scheduled for 5:15 p.m. It was going to be a very long journey, almost 12 hours in the air. It was really hard to say goodbye to Africa. We would have happily stayed. The sky and sunset were beautiful. There's one more twist to the story. According to the original plan, we were supposed to land in Istanbul at 5:35 in the morning and then catch our connection to Budapest at 8:20. But that's not quite how it went. By this point, I was so tired that I only faintly remembered the pilot saying something over the speakers. And the next clear memory I have is the plane touching down, not in Istanbul, but in Ankara. Then it clicked what the pilot had announced earlier. The airport in Istanbul was covered in thick fog, so we couldn't land and were diverted to Ankara instead. They took us into the terminal. We waited for 2 hours, then boarded the plane again and flew back to Istanbul. In the end, they rebooked us onto the later Budapest flight, leaving at 12:45 p.m. Eventually, we saw the beautiful Danube cutting through Budapest beneath us. And a little later, we landed. Our family was waiting for us at the airport. And that was the end of our South African adventure. I'd like to once again express my gratitude and say a huge thank you to the Kevin Richardson Foundation and GoodGood Giving for making this trip possible for us. A few years ago, I really wanted to go to South Africa for at least a week as a volunteer at Kevin's Wildlife Sanctuary, but it didn't work out. And not long after that, they stopped the volunteer program altogether. So the fact that I was able to be there now and experience so much more than I ever imagined is an incredible gift. One I will always be grateful for. So, thank you. And thank you for watching this travel series. I hope you enjoyed it. All the best and see you next time.